They weren't mine by blood, but I was the one packing lunches, walking them to school, and staying up through fevers. I didn't raise them because I had to. I raised them because someone needed to. My name's Charles. Most people just call me Chuck. I'm 67 now, and I've lived in the same two-story house on the edge of Springdale for nearly 30 years. The siding's weathered, the porch creaks, and the backyard needs a new fence, but it's home. And for a long time, it wasn't just mine. I met Eileen when I was 54, a few years after my first wife passed. She was warm, soft-spoken, with silver strands already in her hair and a tired laugh that I found comforting. We weren't kids anymore. No sparks flying, no grand romance. Just companionship, understanding. We both had losses, and we both knew what loneliness felt like. She had a grown daughter, Melissa, a storm in human form. Always chasing a new job, a new man, a new excuse. Melissa had 2 kids, Mason and Claire. Little ones. Mason was 3, Claire had just turned 5. Their father? Some man from Arizona. Never met him. Probably never will. When Melissa vanished, first emotionally, then physically, it wasn't a question of what we would do. It was just done. Eileen took them in. And me? I followed suit. No ceremony. No asking. Just school registrations, daycare pickups, shoe tying, and oatmeal and bedtime stories. At first, it felt temporary. She'll be back, Eileen said. She just needs time. Weeks passed. Then months. Then years. Melissa sent birthday texts once in a while. A check from nowhere. An old postcard. But she was never really there. So I filled in the blanks. Mason called me Grandpa Chuck by the time he was 5. Claire stopped asking about her mom before she hit 10. And I started thinking of them as mine. Not legally. Not biologically. But in every other way that mattered. We weren't rich. I was already semi-retired when the kids came to live with us. I'd done 30 years in facilities management for the local hospital. Still did some part-time consulting, inspections, safety plans, that sort of thing. Eileen worked the front desk at a dental clinic. We lived modestly, but steadily. I fixed up the spare bedroom into a bunk room. Bought used bikes, patched up hand-me-down shoes. Eileen cooked. I handled homework. We weren't perfect. God knows, we weren't young. But we were solid. I'll never forget one night, Mason came down with a fever. I stayed up all night with a wet cloth on his forehead, rocking him in that squeaky armchair by the window. Sometime around dawn, he looked up at me, eyes half closed, and said, "Thanks, Grandpa. You're better than a dad." I didn't cry then. I just smiled and rubbed his back until he fell asleep again. But later, when I sat on the porch watching the sun rise over the maple trees, I felt something deep settle in my chest. This wasn't just a favor to Eileen. This was life. This was my real second chapter. I wish I could say Eileen and I were always in sync about it. But as the years wore on, something shifted. At first it was small. She started going out more without telling me. Reconnecting with old friends from her church group. Keeping her phone closer. Talking less. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off. "I just need space sometimes, Chuck. It's not about you." But something in her tone didn't sit right. Still, I didn't push. Maybe I should have. But after all we'd built, all we'd carried together, I trusted her. I believed in what we had. I believed that raising those kids together meant something unshakable. But the truth was already sprouting cracks beneath the surface. Cracks I didn't want to see. When Claire turned 16 and Mason 14, the house started to feel bigger. They had their own lives now, school, sports, sleepovers. I was proud. Watching them grow was the greatest gift I never saw coming. But it also meant the one thing that had kept our little world tightly bound, the need for us, was starting to loosen. And with that space, I saw more clearly what had been there for a while. Eileen wasn't distant. She was preparing. Not for retirement. Not for travel. But for a future without me. I didn't know the details then. Not yet. But I knew the shape of what was coming. One night, while Eileen was in the shower, I passed by the kitchen table and saw an open envelope. I wasn't snooping. I swear to you, I wasn't. But the header caught my eye. A housing application. Senior living community. 1 bedroom. Solo lease. And her signature at the bottom. Not ours. Hers. Alone. I felt like the room tilted under me. She hadn't said a word. No discussion. No fight. Nothing. She wasn't just thinking about leaving. She was already halfway out the door. But this isn't a story about rage. Or throwing plates. Or loud confrontations. It's a story about quiet heartbreak. And the realization that sometimes, Even after years of giving your all, people will choose to rewrite their ending without you in it. Some people leave without slamming the door. They just stop coming home in their eyes first. That's how Eileen left me, slowly, quietly, like steam fading from a cup. After I saw the application on the table, I didn't say anything. Not that night. Not even the next day. I folded the envelope back up, left it where I found it, and went outside to rake leaves until my shoulders burned. What was I supposed to do? Storm in there and demand answers? Ask her why she was signing leases while we still shared coffee every morning and tucked the kids in at night? I've never been that kind of man. I was raised to believe in patience, in giving people room, in dignity, even when you're bleeding inside. And part of me still hoped there was another explanation. Maybe it was a backup plan, a misprint. Maybe she was applying for her sister, who'd been talking about downsizing. I told myself a lot of things that week, but none of them felt true. That Friday, we had dinner like always. Claire was at practice. Mason was in his room, headphones on, building some giant model spaceship out of toothpicks. Eileen sat across from me, eating quietly. She didn't notice I'd barely touched my food. She didn't notice I looked at her hands more than her eyes. She didn't notice I'd stopped pretending. When she cleared her plate, I finally said it. I saw the letter. Her fork clinked in the sink. She didn't turn around. What letter? She asked, too fast. The one from Linden Terrace. The senior living place. She was silent for a beat. Then she sighed, not surprised. Not angry. Just tired. I was going to tell you. When? She finally turned. When the kids were settled. When it was the right time. I nodded slowly. And when would that be? When Claire graduates. When Mason drives off for college. She didn't answer. That's when I realized this wasn't a new idea. This was the plan. It had just never included me. She walked over to the table and sat down across from me again, but this time like a stranger. I didn't want to hurt you, Chuck. You didn't think packing up your life behind my back might do that? She looked down. You've always been good. Solid. But I never wanted this to be forever. That hit harder than any curse word ever could. She started explaining about how she never expected the kids to stay so long. How she missed having something that was hers. How she didn't want to spend her final years just coasting. Funny, I thought that's what we were building toward. A quiet life. A small garden. Some travel, maybe. 2 rocking chairs and stories told over sun tea. Instead, she wanted to hit reset. Alone. And the part that really broke me? She said it all like we hadn't built anything at all. Like the last decade had been some long layover she never meant to take. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just nodded and went out to the porch. And that's where I stayed for 3 hours. Until the kids came down and asked what was for dinner. The next few weeks felt like walking through molasses. We coexisted, barely. She said she was waiting for the right moment to tell the kids. I said I wouldn't do it for her. In the meantime, I watched the pieces shift. She canceled some of our joint accounts. She stopped sharing her schedule. She turned her phone face down, even in the house. I didn't need more proof. But it came anyway. One night, I got home from a job site early. Her car was in the driveway, but when I walked in, the house was silent. Except for a voice. A man's voice. Laughing, warm, familiar. Not a phone call. A video call. I paused outside the hallway near the den. The door was cracked just enough to see the reflection in the dark screen across from her. She was smiling. Her voice was softer than it had been with me in months. Soon, she said, twirling a pin in her fingers. Just a few more weeks. The man on the screen nodded. I backed away before they saw me. That was enough. That night, after everyone went to bed, I took out an old notebook from the drawer. I made 2 lists. What I had left. What I refused to lose. And then I started planning. First, I checked the house title. We'd refinanced 2 years ago. My name was still on it. Good. Next, I met with an attorney. Quietly. A friend of mine from the VA. He explained my rights, helped me get ahead of any accidental oversights Eileen might try during the transition. Then I made sure Mason and Claire's school records had my emergency contact first. I couldn't bear the thought of her walking away and dragging them into some unstable future. And finally, I started preparing me. I joined a walking group in the mornings. Started organizing the garage. Cut back on consulting work. Not because I was giving up, but because I wanted the space to think. I wasn't planning to fight for her. I was planning to let her go, but protect everything else. One Saturday morning, Eileen walked in holding a small cardboard box. Inside were a few books, a sweater, her tablet charger. I'm going to stay with Carol for a bit, she said. I just nodded. She looked surprised I didn't argue. You're not going to say anything? I already did, I said quietly. You just weren't listening. She hesitated, maybe waiting for a speech, a plea, a tear. I gave her none of it. Goodbye, Eileen. And just like that, she left. No hug. No apology. Just the sound of her car backing out of the driveway one last time. But this wasn't the end of the story. Because 2 months later, Melissa came back. And she wasn't alone. Sometimes, the past doesn't knock. It walks straight through the front door, like it never left, like nothing happened. That's exactly how Melissa came back. 2 months. That's how long it had been since Eileen left. The house was quieter, sure, but not in a bad way. The tension had gone. I still made coffee for 2 in the mornings, out of habit. Still folded a second towel in the bathroom. But gradually, life took on a different shape. I spent more time in the backyard, fixing the fence I'd ignored for years. I sat with Mason and Claire in the evenings, asking real questions. Not just, how was school? But, how are you doing, really? And they responded. Carefully, at first. But they opened up. They knew something had changed. They just didn't know how much. Then, on a cloudy Tuesday, Melissa showed up. No warning. No call. Just her old, dented Toyota pulling into the driveway like it had never disappeared. I opened the door. She stood there in jeans and a faded hoodie, holding 2 suitcases and a small duffel bag. Hey, Chuck, she said, eyes darting behind me. Are the kids home? I didn't say anything for a second. Just stared at her. She looked older. Thinner. Not quite worn out, but definitely weathered. The same spark in her eyes, but with less shine. Mason's at practice. Claire's upstairs, I said finally. She nodded. Can I come in? I stepped aside. She dropped the bags by the doorway and walked in like she still remembered where everything was. And she did. She headed straight for the kitchen, opened the same cabinet for a glass, and poured herself water from the tap. I know I should have called, she said, not quite looking at me. I just didn't know if I'd actually come. I leaned on the doorway. And what made you decide you would? She turned, both hands around the glass. Mom said she was gone. There it was. Not, I missed my kids. Not, I've changed. Not, thank you for raising them. Just, Mom said she left. I studied her. There was no ring on her finger. No man in the car. Just one woman who had walked away from 2 kids and now wanted to return like it was still her place. Why now, Melissa? She looked at the floor. Because it's my turn. I raised an eyebrow. I was a mess back then, she continued. I know that. But I've been working, trying to get things right. I've been clean for over a year. I've got a job in Kansas City, front desk at a car dealership. It's not much, but I'm holding it down. And I want to reconnect. With Mason. With Claire. I want to make it up to them. I didn't say anything. Melissa set her glass down, softer than she used to. Like she was trying not to break anything, maybe including herself. Later that night, I told Claire. She sat at the kitchen table, one foot curled under her, chewing on the end of a pencil. She's back, Claire said, not lifting her eyes from her notebook. She says she wants to make things right. Claire gave a short, dry laugh. Now she wants to be a mom? She says she's clean. Says she has a job. Claire put her pencil down. Did she ask about us? Or was it all about her? I didn't have to answer. My silence said enough. I'll talk to her, Claire said. But that doesn't mean I trust her. Mason was easier. He was younger, more curious than bitter. He asked questions. Where has she been? Is she staying? Are you okay, Grandpa? That last one caught me off guard. It reminded me that through all of this, they were watching me, too. How I handled Melissa would shape how they handled betrayal. How I forgave, or didn't, would become part of their emotional vocabulary. That's a heavy thing to carry. Melissa stayed in the guest room. She offered to cook once. Burned the rice. Forgot we didn't eat pork anymore. Tried to drive Claire to school. Claire refused. But she didn't leave. She stuck around. Read books. Clean dishes. Spoke softly. One night, while we were sitting on the back porch, she finally asked, Where's Mom now? I looked out across the lawn. The moon was low and orange. She's with someone else, I said. Left not long after you called. Melissa leaned back in her chair. Figures. You surprised. She shook her head slowly. No. She always chased better. Better house. Better man. Better life. Just never stopped to ask if she was the one that needed changing. I didn't defend Eileen. Not because I hated her, but because Melissa was right. And for the first time in years, we agreed on something. 2 weeks later, Melissa asked the question I knew was coming. Can the kids come live with me? In Kansas City? I didn't answer immediately. I took a walk instead. Down the block. Past the old oak tree Mason used to climb. Past the bus stop where Claire used to cry when she forgot her lunchbox. Past the corner store where I bought ice cream after hard days. I walked until the sky turned pink. Then I turned back, because I knew the answer. That night, I sat them both down. Melissa, Claire, Mason. You're their mother, I said to Melissa. No one could change that. She nodded slowly. But that doesn't mean you've earned their trust back. That has to be built. Claire crossed her arms. Mason leaned in. I'm not going to stop you from seeing them, but I won't let you undo what's finally steady. Melissa opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. You left them once. I picked up the pieces. If you want to be part of their lives, it happens here. Slowly. Carefully. Mason smiled faintly. Claire, for the first time, reached out and touched her mom's hand. Melissa's eyes filled, but no one said a word. I'm not sure what'll happen next, but I know what won't. They won't be abandoned again. Not on my watch. She thought she could come back like nothing happened. Like love was something you could misplace and pick up later. No questions asked. But time changes things, especially people. It had been 3 months since Melissa returned. She was still in the house, still trying. The kids, especially Claire, were cautious, but warming. Not because Melissa was perfect now, but because she was steady. No promises. No drama. Just presence. And then, on a quiet Thursday morning in early spring, Eileen showed up. I'd just come back from the farmer's market, a small basket of eggs, some bread, 2 tomatoes, when I saw the familiar blue sedan in the driveway. I stood by the door for a full 10 seconds before stepping inside. There she was, in the kitchen, like she'd never left. I let myself in, she said, not apologizing. I nodded. Still remember the key spot under the flower pot? She gave a small smile. Old habits. I set the groceries down slowly. Watch her. She looked almost the same, but not quite. There was tension in her shoulders, like she'd been carrying something heavy for a while. Her makeup was minimal. She wore a soft pink sweater I hadn't seen before. New life. New version of her. So, I said, what brings you here? She didn't answer immediately. Just stared at me like trying to guess my mood. The truth is, I didn't have one. I was calm. Clear. That unsettled her more than anger would have. I heard Melissa's back, she said finally. She is. And the kids. Still here. Growing up. She swallowed. I didn't expect things to unravel so fast. You mean your relationship? Or the company? I asked. She flinched. Turns out her new partner, the man she'd left everything behind for, was a talker. Charming at dinners, quiet in courtrooms. When the dust settled, Eileen's family business had taken the fall for a string of bad contracts. The man walked away untouched. Her brother blamed her. Her mother stopped speaking to her. And now she stood in my kitchen, not looking for money. Looking for dignity. I made a mistake, Chuck. I didn't move. Just waited. I thought I wanted more. Something exciting. I thought you were too settled. I was, I said. That was the point. Her eyes glistened. I hurt you. Yes. I don't expect anything. Not forgiveness. I wanted to see you. One more time. See the kids. Maybe say goodbye the right way. I leaned against the table. Why now? She looked down. Because when the dust clears, you start thinking about who you used to be. And who stood beside you. She asked to sit with Claire and Mason, just for a moment. I didn't stop her. Claire said she was polite. Nervous. Like a guest in her own house. Mason barely looked up from his cereal. When she left, she paused at the doorway. You were a good man, Chuck. I still am, I said. Just no longer yours. She nodded. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but she wiped it before I could register it as real. She closed the door softly behind her. That night, Melissa sat beside me on the porch. She's still chasing something, huh? I nodded. Only now she's running in circles. Melissa chuckled. You know, I used to think you were the boring one. And now, she sipped her tea. Now I think you were the only adult in the room. Life after that visit fell back into rhythm. Claire got her learner's permit. Mason joined a robotics club. Melissa started talking about getting a bigger place. Just renting, nothing fancy. But nearby. You've done more than anyone expected, Chuck, she said. But maybe it's time I stood up on my own 2 feet again. It wasn't a rejection. It was respect. And when I saw Claire helping her mom pick paint samples at the hardware store, I knew they were finding something real. something I couldn't give them, but have protected long enough for them to build. A month later, Melissa moved into a small townhouse across town. Claire chose to stay with me. Mason split his time. And me? I started doing something I hadn't in years. Sleeping in. One morning, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Eileen. It wasn't long. No excuses. No poetry. Just a paragraph. Chuck. I see now that peace doesn't come from new beginnings. It comes from staying steady through hard chapters. Thank you for showing me what that looks like. I'm sorry I couldn't follow your lead. B. I folded it carefully. Placed it in the same drawer where I keep old photos and Claire's kindergarten drawing of me with a cape on. A silent thank you. A quiet ending. No fireworks. Just peace. Sometimes closure doesn't come in a moment. It comes slowly, like a sunrise you barely notice until everything's bright again. The letter from Eileen sat in that drawer for weeks. I didn't reread it. Didn't need to. The words had already settled in the back of my mind, like a song you don't love but know by heart. Things moved on. Claire started applying for colleges. Mason asked if he could take my old toolbox for a project he was building. Melissa invited me over for dinner once a week, and I went, even when I didn't feel like it. I always brought a pie, and she always burned the rice. The routines were different now. Calmer. Quiet. There was no tension in the hallways. No weight in the air. No eggshells underfoot. And then, one Sunday morning, Eileen called. Not texted. Not emailed. She called. I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. Hello. Hi, she said. I'm sorry to call. I know it's been a while. It has. I wanted to tell you something. And I figured you deserved to hear it from me. I waited. I'm leaving town, she said. Permanently. My sister offered me a place out in Arizona. Somewhere quiet. I need the quiet, Chuck. I didn't respond right away. I didn't really know what to say. She kept going. I've been packing, sorting through old things. Came across some photos, birthdays, beach days, holidays with the kids, and you. I didn't realize how many pictures had you in the background. Not posing. Just doing things. Fixing something. Carrying groceries. Laughing with Mason. Reading with Claire. Her voice cracked a little. I used to think those moments didn't matter. That they weren't exciting enough. But now I think, maybe they were the best parts. I let her speak. I won't bother you again. I just wanted to say goodbye. Properly. And to thank you. For being good. Even when I wasn't. I exhaled slowly. Safe travels, Eileen. She paused. Goodbye, Chuck. I stood there for a long time after the call ended, phone still in my hand. And then I smiled. Because it was done. That week, Melissa called me over for dinner again. Mason was there. Claire too. Melissa had cooked chili this time. No rice. After we ate, Claire brought out an old box from the closet. Inside were pictures from when she and Mason first moved in. They'd found them while cleaning. There was one of all of us on the porch, arms full of grocery bags, laughing at something I couldn't remember. Claire held it up. You look tired in this one, Grandpa. I laughed. That was the month you both got the flu, and I didn't sleep for 6 days. Worth it? Mason asked. I looked at him. At both of them. Every second. After dessert, Melissa walked me to the porch. I know this isn't how you thought life would turn out, she said quietly. No, it's not. But, are you okay with where it is now? I looked out across the small yard, the setting sun casting gold on the grass. I think I am, I said. I didn't end up where I planned, but maybe where I needed to be. She nodded. I don't say it enough, but thank you. For everything. You don't need to, I said. Just keep showing up. Weeks passed. Claire got into her top choice school, a small liberal arts college up north. She screamed when the email came. I hugged her for a full minute. Mason started teaching robotics to younger kids at the community center. He came home buzzing with ideas and glue on his hands. And me? I started writing again. Not for anyone. Just notebooks, mostly. Old memories. Reflections. Things I wanted the kids to know long after I was gone. One day, Mason asked if I had any regrets. I thought about it. I thought about the early years, the long hours, the sacrifice, the times I felt invisible. I thought about the betrayals, the lies, the cold shoulders, the moments I was left out of my own life. And I thought about now, the way Claire called just to talk, how Mason hugged me without reason, how Melissa still checked in before making big decisions. Regret? No, I said. Not really. He smiled. That's pretty rare. I nodded. So is finding something worth staying for. I took a trip out to the lake not long after. Same one we used to visit when the kids were little. Brought a thermos of coffee, a folding chair, and that notebook. Sat by the water, listened to birds, and wrote. This life didn't go as planned, but it gave me the kind of strength you only get by standing still when everyone else runs. I raised someone else's children, lost someone I thought would stay, gained people I didn't expect to love, and found myself, not all at once, but piece by piece, every day I chose to keep showing up. As I packed up to leave, a family pulled in nearby. Young couple, 2 kids tumbling out of the car. The dad looked tired, but smiled anyway. I nodded at him as I passed. He nodded back. Hardest job you'll ever love, I said. He laughed. That's what they tell me. I walked to my truck, feeling lighter than I had in years. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight, just my own. And it was enough. You don't always get the ending you dreamed of. But if you're lucky, you get the one you've earned. It's funny, the way houses hold onto sounds. Long after Claire moved into her college dorm, and Mason started spending more nights at Melissa's than mine, I'd still wake up expecting to hear cereal boxes rustling or the front door clicking shut just after 8 a.m. Those little habits stay, even after the people they belonged to are gone. But the silence that filled the house now? It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I'd been retired for a few years already, though I didn't call it that. I just said I had time now. Time to repair things. Right. Sit on the porch with a cup of coffee and not rush anywhere. One morning, Melissa dropped by. No warning. Just like her mom once did, but different in every way that mattered. She was holding a small wooden frame. I found this in Claire's old desk drawer, she said. Thought you should have it. I turned it over. It was a photo from Claire's high school graduation. The 3 of us, Melissa, Claire, and me, arms around each other, smiling like we all belonged. Like this strange, patched-together family somehow held. Thank you, I said. You still writing in those notebooks? She asked. Every morning. You ever think about sharing them? I chuckled. Not sure the world's ready for old man Chuck's thoughts on coffee and forgiveness. Melissa smiled. You'd be surprised. Later that week, I found myself sitting in my den, flipping through one of those notebooks. It wasn't poetry. Nothing flowery. Just real moments, little truths that had shaped me, lessons I'd never planned to learn. One page read. Forgiveness isn't saying it's okay. It's saying you don't get to define what happens next. Another said, sometimes you're not the hero or the victim. You're the one who cleans up the mess, and that matters more than people think. I dog-eared that one. Mason stopped by that Friday night, toolbox in hand. I fixed your shed door, he said. Wouldn't shut all the way. You didn't have to do that. I know. We sat on the back porch for a while. No rush. Just the crickets and a breeze. I think I want to study engineering, he said. Like actually go to school for it. That's great, Mason. You'll be good at it. He hesitated. I wouldn't even be thinking like this if you hadn't been around. I looked over. You taught me what it looks like to stay, even when you don't have to. It hit me then, not in a dramatic way, just quiet and slow. All those years I thought were wasted? They weren't. They were planting. And this was the harvest. Claire came home for the holidays that winter. She brought a boy with her. Kind eyes. Firm handshake. Called me sir without it sounding forced. She made her famous pecan pie, same recipe we used to mess up together. Still overbaked the edges, I teased. Tradition, she replied, nudging my arm. After dinner, she pulled me aside. You ever think about writing a book? I smiled. You sound like your mom. She laughed. Well, sometimes she's not wrong. By spring, I had turned those notebooks into a small manuscript. Nothing fancy. Just chapters with titles like Porchlight Wisdom, Raising Kids That Aren't Yours, and The Art of Staying Quiet When Everyone Else Is Loud. Melissa helped me edit it. Claire made the cover design. Mason set up an email for readers to send letters. We printed 50 copies. Sold them at the local market. By summer, we were on our 3rd run. One morning, I got a handwritten letter. The return address was unfamiliar. The handwriting wasn't. It was from Eileen. Chuck. I saw your book at a library in Phoenix. Someone had underlined the part about cleaning up messes. I knew it was yours. I'm glad people are hearing your voice now. It deserves to be heard. I'm doing better. I hope you are too. B. I folded the letter. Placed it in the back of my newest notebook. No bitterness. No anger. Just quiet acknowledgement. Some things don't need a reply. That summer, Mason graduated from his trade program. Claire got a job at a nonprofit that taught young kids how to write their stories. Melissa enrolled in night school. And me? I started teaching a free writing class at the senior center. Every Wednesday, coffee, cookies, and a room full of people with something to say. Some wrote about lost spouses. Others wrote about fishing trips. One guy only wrote haikus about beans. And I loved every one of them, because it meant they were still here, still trying, still telling the world, I matter. The last page of my final notebook reads, I wasn't anyone's first choice. I didn't build an empire. I didn't leave behind riches. But I was there when it counted. I showed up. I stayed. I helped raise a family that wasn't mine. And in the end, that became the best part of my life. That's what remains. Not the pain, not the betrayal, not the silence, but the people, the moments, the love that grew in spite of it all. And if that's how I'm remembered, well, I'll take it. Every single time.